Streaky, the undisputed king of audio misinformation, has fired shots. Let's listen to what he has to say.
I heard a geeky mastering engineer on YouTube saying that all these big mastering engineers don't know what they're doing when it comes to sound because they don't know the technicalities that go into making the equipment work, what it's doing, and all the different digital aspects of mastering. Well, that's not true whatsoever, because you don't have to be able to build the car to be able to drive it fast. And that's the same with music. Most people that I've met who are amazing engineers do it all off ear and do it all off feel, rather than knowing, if I do that, the actual scientific calculation for that means this. None of them do that. They just get on with it, turn knobs, make things sound great.
There's always a massive asymmetry between the time it takes someone to chat a bunch of shit and the time it takes to wade through and clean up the mess. It's like giving a toddler a bucket of paint. Now, I don't know Streaky personally, but seeing as he's one of the most visible mastering engineers on YouTube, I've obviously bumped into a few of his videos over the years. But I got to the unfortunate point with his content that I'll generally just click on stuff for a laugh nowadays, rather than any genuine hope of learning anything, because the quality of his content, by and large, seems to be approximately as deranged as his facial expressions in his thumbnails. In fact, I don't even think I'm alone in wondering whether an integral part of his internet marketing strategy is just to confuse people deliberately. The second I make even the tiniest of mistakes, my haters will descend upon me in the comment section like a frenzied swarm of starving vultures. But Streaky is allowed to get away with saying shit like this and nobody bats an eyelid.
If you don't have any kit, just run it through a really clean XLR cable and you'll still get a little bit of warmth and juice from it.
But as he seems to recently have fired shots at me, and the fact that he disrespected one of my guests by insulting his medical condition, I thought it was time to do a good old-fashioned YouTube response video. Let's first address his recent video, which was obviously directed at me, and he says that you don't need to know anything about building cars in order to drive fast.
You don't have to be able to build the car to be able to drive it fast.
Now, this is the kind of cope that people who can't wire a plug say to make themselves feel better, but I know it's an analogy, but even the analogy is full of shit, so let's start off by debunking that. Of course, just as anyone who knows anything about motorsports will tell you, if you want to be pro level, MotoGP, Formula 1, anything where you're going really fast and actually winning, you need to know a shit ton about how engines work, how the car actually drives on a technical level. The reason why Valentino Rossi was so successful in MotoGP is because he worked really tightly with the engineers on the Yamaha racing team, and he refined the prototype engines, and he pushed hard, especially with the cross-plane technology from Yamaha, and he understood the complex relation between the ignition pulse frequency and the tyre grip when cornering, and that's something that other teams weren't even looking at so deeply at the time, and that technical knowledge was what enabled him to win 56 Premier Class races with Yamaha, and that resulted in him winning 4 World Class titles and becoming one of the most famous names in the history of motorsports. So yes, any idiot with a car can just put their foot on the accelerator and go moderately fast in a straight line, but next to a pro racer, the second you go round the corner, you're going to get absolutely smoked. And bringing that back to talking about audio and mastering, that's kind of the equivalent of a noob just slapping an ozone preset on the master and thinking that that's good in terms of mastering. You're absolutely going to get smoked by a professional mastering engineer who comes along and does a proper job. So that is the difference. It's not just about twiddling knobs and using your ears. You actually need to know what you're on about. And exactly that is one of the things that annoys me most about Streaky, because he's always conflating mastering with making music. He says stuff like this.
This is the number one thing that I hate about the music industry. It's people getting too technical about making music when it all should be about what sounds great and what feels great.
Now, some uncritical viewers might think, yeah, I agree with Streaky, because music's just about the feeling, it's about the emotion, it's about using your ears, and you can just turn knobs and see where you go. But no, that's a conflation, because mastering engineers aren't in the business of making music. We are service sector professionals performing a skilled technical job. But now we know that Streaky loves randomly twiddling knobs, but he hates understanding what those knobs actually do. Let's have a look at one of my favourite videos of his.
Cables do sound different. They sound better. Some sound worse. Van Damme sounds a little bit harder and brighter. It does make a difference. I don't care if someone says it doesn't make a difference. I've had this with manufacturers as well who have told me, well, just use these cables on it because it's fine. They don't, there's no difference. It's snake oil, as they like to say. And it's like, well, it's not, because I've done it. And I know the difference, and I can hear a difference.
So of course this demonstrates how unscientifically he approaches audio. He just believes his ears, and we all know that human perception is prone to be fooled by psychoacoustic trickery and biases. But ironically, Ethan Weiner, the guy who he insulted in my comment section, he debunked all of this audiophile cable nonsense years ago. He made a null tester, hardware standalone null tester device, and made some great content on YouTube that you can just watch, and he debunked all of that. So rather than me explaining why audiophile cables are a bunch of nonsense and are indeed snake oil, I can just put in here a clip of Ethan Weiner explaining exactly the same thing that he did years ago.
This costs $750, I think, $700, something like that. All right, and then we bring the null gain way up. And again, we're able to null it to silence. What have we learned from this? Well, we've learned that of all the wires I tested, they all pass audio exactly the same. No matter what the vendor tells you that this one has more clarity or more sparkle or more presence or more realism or better imaging or more solid bass, you could be sure that it's all pure bullshit. Bullshit. Because these wires are all passing audio the same, and when you reverse the polarity and add them together, the result is silence down into the hiss of the low noise preamps in this box.
But one of the things that frustrates me the most about Streaky's content is his obsession with secret magical EQ settings that he can tell you, and if you just do this indiscriminately on any style of music, on any source material, it will sound great every time.
This little EQ tip is going to make every single mix you do sound amazing. Set the Q for around a medium setting. Now drop it by half a dB or 1 dB, you've got to try that, at 160 Hertz. Will sound great. Separation in the low end every single time.
Maybe some people are willing to forgive that kind of content because it's a YouTube short. Maybe there's more context, that he made some kind of longer content and there's more context in that, and the context has kind of been deleted because it's just a short form clickbaity kind of thing for the algorithm. Okay, so I forgive him for that, but it's like, no, he makes entire videos where he's recommending specific frequencies indiscriminately for any source material.
I like a 20 Hertz cut in the low end around an 18 dB shelf. Sometimes if I've got a kick and I really want to get some nice low end kick out, then I'll go between 50 and 60, normally 60 on a bell. If I want to make the kick a little bit tighter, then around 160, I like to put a small cut in there, so I make a bell shape. I like to sometimes put in around sort of the 220, 240 mark. So if we put a dB in, say, and you can sometimes add around 650. I'll add around 5K. You can download this FabFilter preset from the link in the description.
So there you go. He does literally recommend specific EQ moves unto themselves, irrespective of the source material, which hopefully all of my viewers understand is totally idiotic and not something that a professional engineer does. And also notice how most of his so-called favorite EQ moves are all boosts. And as I teach in my mastering and EQ courses, this is a massive red flag. And I apologize for explaining this for the 1000th time, but for the benefit of anyone who hasn't done any of my courses and you don't know what I say on this, when you boost, you trick your ears into thinking that the EQ change is good because the ear prefers something which is louder. So it might not be better, but your ear is tricked into thinking that it is better. So you at least need to balance boosting with cutting to get kind of like a neutral take and not just always fool your ears. My personal approach is to do a strict negative approach and never or hardly ever do any boosting. And this is obviously because of human psychoacoustic biases. And I'm happy to argue for negative EQ from a physiological perspective, a logical perspective, an experience perspective. I'm happy to debate negative EQ all day long. A boost-only approach, especially in mastering, is in my opinion a red flag at the very least. So let's see what Streaky says on this exact matter.
I hardly cut anything. I'm doing wide, tasteful boosts. Maybe a little cut here and there if there's a small problem, but it's very tight cues when I'm cutting.
Well, there you go. And he's got many other videos which just give bad advice. Like he says, you should never compress drums.
Stop compressing your drums because you're going to kill all of the punch and attack in them.
Many things like this are just the opposite of reality. You don't lose punch when you compress drums. Often, if you've got a moderately slow attack, you gain punch. You can make drums even more punchy. Pretty much everyone who's not a total noob at mixing knows that. Why is he teaching this? Is he teaching that to confuse people so that people just don't know what to do, so they maybe come to him to learn more and pay to learn from it? I don't know what the motivation is. Does he literally not know this noob level stuff? Like, I just don't understand. But anyway, I don't want to just throw this guy under the bus, but I'm genuinely confused at why he's supposedly a professional engineer with decades of experience, but he teaches all of this stuff so incorrectly. So anyway, let me know down below what you think of Streaky's videos. If he wants to come onto my channel and discuss any of this, I'm 100% up for it. I can talk all day long about negative EQ and why does he promote specific EQ boosts and specific frequencies irrespective of source material? Why? I'm really interested to hear his take on that. Why does he do that? It's just obviously incorrect, obviously wrong. Why would he do that? And if he wants to come on here and give his side of the story of why he does that, I'm all ears. Well, anyway, if you think this video came off a bit harsh, well, I think anyone who comes on YouTube saying that they're an expert, they've got 20 years of professional experience, a lot of people are going to be watching that person and trying to learn from them. So we should collectively hold them to a higher standard. You guys hold me to a very high standard, and I don't censor any of you in the comments, regardless of how harsh you are and whatever insults you throw at me. I let everyone critique me. I am on here on YouTube and I am definitely able to be critiqued. You can make a response video to me. Everyone is free to do that. And I am free to make a response video to Streaky calling out his nonsense. So I think it's fair game, but these aren't just little slip-ups that I've caught Streaky making just in passing within a broader video. They're absolutely fundamental patterns of bullshit advice which he promotes time and time again in his video content. Now, I've wanted to share my opinions on this topic for years now, and here we are, I have now done so.